If you don't mind, get your finger out of my face. That's what Meghan Markle allegedly snapped at Prince William back in June of 2018, right after Harry and Meghan, the newlyweds, had returned from their delayed honeymoon. 4 years after the release of the legendary tell-all book Revenge, the master himself is back with Betrayal, with not one, but 2 excerpts as of the day of filming. Goodness, I apologize that I can only film on Sundays. Knowing my luck, there'll be a 3rd one before I even release this video, but c'est la vie. Starting off with the first juicy excerpt. Meghan's brainwashed Harry, Camilla told a friend. Estranged from the royal family, with their finances dwindling and Netflix deal cancelled, what next for Harry and Meghan? In his explosive new book, Tom Bower reveals how it all went wrong for the golden couple. This first portion of the excerpts isn't exactly new information per se, but perhaps more detail, more insight into the incredibly shaky relationship that existed between Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales on the one hand, and specifically Meghan, but of course, Meghan and Harry as a unit on the other. Prince William and Catherine clocked onto Meghan's sinister agenda very early on. I would say potentially from the very first meeting, if not before, if not after they Googled her and watched a couple of her interviews, and like the rest of us, got a whiff of trouble. Both evidently saw Meghan as a threat rather than an ally, and of course we all now know and have known for a few years, very rightly so. The Cambridges, as they were known at the time, believed that Meghan was not reconciled to what was deemed her destiny in London. She, they thought, lamented Harry's unlikely chances of one day being king, just as she regretted the possibility that she would never be queen. Yet again, what we've all been saying for years. Meghan has always eyed the throne. In fact, some people believe that she had initially set her eyes on Prince William. Yes, Prince William, who had been married since 2011 and in a relationship with Catherine since 2001? Some people even take it further and say she got with Harry to get to William, and then when she failed, she took Harry and, they Mexited. But again, all rumor and conjecture at this point. William's original fears were soon realized. Meghan had become a divisive agent. To please her, Harry was ignoring his old friends. He even changed his telephone number without telling his family. Increasingly, his character mirrored Meghan's. Meghan's brainwashed Harry, Camilla told a friend. I know I've said this at least 100 times before, but just swap the genders and everyone would be denouncing this behavior as abusive. Next, we touch upon yet another topic that we commentators have been observing and commenting on for the last, I would say, 3 years, maybe 2023, perhaps 2024, let's say a couple of years, which is the very obvious separation, the professional separation that was, I believe, even announced by someone from the Sussex camp a couple of years ago. Tom Bower writes, since the explosive 2021 interview with Oprah, Meghan has separated herself from Harry, except seemingly when a joint appearance would enrich her publicity. Meghan's self-promotion as Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex has become more sophisticated. At the same time, Harry's troubles have mounted. He's been isolated, he's been permanently alienated from his nearest and dearest, and this yet again points to the toxic nature of the relationship between Meghan and Harry. I'm not claiming anything as fact, just to make things clear, because I don't know. But when you see a couple where one of them is thriving and smiling and controlling the whole narrative and the other one just becomes more and more diminished and isolated and just they shrink as time goes by, it's not exactly difficult for observers to start connecting the dots. Very early in 2025, before With Love Meghan was even released, but I believe the trailer was dropped. It turns out that Netflix, apart from the financial investment that they wasted on Meghan's series, didn't seem to be otherwise invested in the series in the slightest. During the Netflix launch of the 2025 season in the Egyptian theater, not only did Meghan's series fail to feature in Netflix's glossy brochure, but Bella Bajaria, the same woman whose praises Meghan would endlessly sing and who was supposedly the progenitor of With Love Meghan after Meghan sent her a basket of homemade jam or something, who also happened to be Netflix's head of content, didn't even mention Meghan in her speech. The insights continue. Meghan's publicist suggested that the couple head down to LA to be seen comforting the victims of the widespread and devastating wildfires that had gripped the region. A cameraman from Archwell was waiting for their arrival at a soup kitchen in Pasadena, set up to help a group of homeless people. After recording a video of her listening and hugging victims, the scene was posted that day by Meghan's publicists to Meghan's 1.6 million Instagram followers. Now, some of you might be scratching your heads and thinking, well, this isn't exactly new information. We all know that they're disaster tourists and this was all set up as a PR stunt, which, yes, of course it was. But the insight, the revelation to me rather, is the fact that this was directly connected, at least according to Tom Bauer, to the dismal lack of a mention and the jokes that were cracked at Meghan and Harry's expense during that Netflix event. I just thought that Meghan and Harry saw the opportunity to be disaster tourists and swooped in like the vultures that they are. But it's somehow worse when you realize that their publicist suggested that they do this and the cameras were all set up all to mitigate the damage that was being done to them in the realm of entertainment. I think the saddest part is, and the most pathetic part for Meghan and Harry, is that no one is surprised anymore. If you read this about someone in the first instance, you kind of get shocked by the audacity, by the lack of humanity, by the selfishness. But with Meghan and Harry, it's all become so normal. It's just their default setting. Of course, they're going to use other people's misfortune to prop themselves up. It's all they've ever done. Why post it? If this was truly out of the kindness and goodness of their hearts, why post it to social media? Why have a cameraman not only there, but at Uvalde, where the dead children were barely cold in their graves? That's a question for her defenders to answer, I'm sure, in the comment section below. You know, the one where you love heaping insults? That one. After this disastrous attempt at damage control backfired royally, forgive the pun, Meghan, feeling downtrodden by the criticism, needed a global stage for genuine admiration and cheering fans. To her good fortune, she married a puppet who agreed that she could yet again star at the Invictus Games, which he was about to open in Canada. We've always had our suspicions that people who are running the Invictus Games, at least one person, I will say, has not only allowed it to happen, but has promoted it. Enter Nick Booth, the chief executive of the games. After the dismissal of the two Canadian executives who both resented the pushy Sussexes, not least their exorbitant expenses for security, accommodation, and a private jet, Booth was recruited. And he was promptly classed as a sycophant by the ousted executives. As Harry's doorkeeper, Booth used the prince, alias an attractive asset, as a fundraiser to secure more money, to arrange TV coverage, and tilt the media's focus firmly towards the glamour of Harry and Meghan. Some people might argue that this is a clever tactic, and if you want to raise money, then you just do what you gotta do. So perhaps in some alternate universe, using Harry and Meghan as the glamorous faces of the Invictus Games would have worked had they, or at least she, not been a malignant narcissist, in my opinion, based on her behavior. Had they been a William and a Catherine type, people who don't make the show about themselves, they know their purpose there, which is, yes, to attract attention for the goodness, for the benefit of the organization to which they are attached, not for their own selfish gain. And that's primarily why Meghan was never going to be a good fit for the royal family, because that is what the royal family's public role is all about. But by the time Nick Booth was recruited, Meghan and Harry's reputation was already in the dirt. They had already proven themselves to be toxic, to have the reverse Midas touch. And so for Nick to continue to use Harry and Meghan ostensibly as a way to raise funds and to promote the Invictus Games is not only unbelievable, but at that point, for the interest of the Invictus Games, at least, highly unethical. Because as we've all been saying for the last few years, Meghan and Harry, Meghan in particular, detracts from the main focus of the Invictus Games, which has been in the past and always should be the injured veterans. In the opinion of the departed Canadian executives, Meghan was a distraction from the injured veterans. She's bling, not rehabilitation, protested one of the men. Their criticism was echoed by Dominic Reid, the longtime head of the Invictus Foundation. Past coverage, admitted Reid, had been disappointing. He acknowledged that the media totally ignored the competitive aspect of the event. Reid blamed the Invictus leaders for allowing the games to become the Harry and Meghan show, and yet Nick Booth, with Harry's encouragement, did not seem concerned. At the Invictus opening ceremony, watching the parade from midway up the tier were Harry and Meghan. They had arrived at the stadium by car from their hotel's penthouse suite across the street. They were then transferred to an electric golf cart. The video of the orchestrated welcome, I just love Tom Bauer, was of course posted on Meghan's Instagram feed. The Meghan Games had been launched. Another aspect of the Invictus Games, especially the 2025 ones, was commentary on just how empty the event actually was. At the opening wheelchair basketball match between Nigeria and the United States at the Vancouver Convention Center, the mood was sullen. Merely 43 ticket-buying spectators sat morosely together in a hall fitted with seats for more than 2,000 people. On the other side of the court, about 100 people brought in by the organizers were corralled to surround the Sussexes when they eventually arrived, from their suite as they were driven around because they can't use their legs, presumably. The edited TV pictures would suggest that the hall was full. Aside from the photos that have surfaced online where people were noticing that the event was pretty much empty, there is this video where you can see the stands around Tom Bauer himself when he went to sit after he was harassed by presumably a Sussex squatty, a sugar. Are we still calling them sugars? You can see why they love Meghan. They're basically cut from the same cloth. Elder abuse is apparently perfectly acceptable to them. Tom Bauer, I believe, is in his late 70s. This behavior is nothing short of disgusting. But I digress. I don't know if he deliberately was sitting in an empty spot or whether this was where the media or the press were allowed to sit. I doubt Tom Bauer was approved as part of the official press list because the Sussexes would have recognized his name. So perhaps he was simply there as a private spectator, for the purposes of researching his book, obviously, which we are now about to be blessed with. I don't think I mentioned, on the 26th of March. I live in Japan now, so I'm going to try my best to get a physical copy, but if not, I will definitely be buying an online version. We close off the first excerpt with, yet again, something that we have all been commenting on, but never had concrete evidence of. Meghan and Harry's financial woes. 6 years later, we can say with certainty that Megxit has been a resounding failure. All of their multi-million-dollar deals have evaporated into thin air. Aside from these lucrative contracts, which now no longer exist, the Archwell Foundation, as we all know, was wound up only a couple of months ago, which really didn't come as a surprise at all. That thing has always been a farce. It's always been a black hole in terms of finances. Its expenses have almost always outweighed its income, if not always. And so when it was clear that 2026 did not have any substantial donations due, and with only $8 million in the bank, again, I say only relatively speaking, the Sussexes decided to wrap up their charitable, quote unquote, activities. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Tom Bauer seems to believe that the Sussexes are aiming for nothing less than to be reinstated in London by the king as trusted members of the royal family. The vehicle for their triumphant return would be the Invictus Games, to be held in July 2027 in Birmingham. From the outset, Harry had plotted for the king to open the games as the backdrop for Meghan, accompanied by their children, to dominate the media. I have every reason to believe what Tom Bauer says is true. However, in this instance, I do find myself a bit conflicted. Because yes, on the one hand, Meghan and Harry have absolutely failed, and a return to the royal fold seems like it would make sense, but this is Meghan Markle we're talking about. And because of Catherine's existence in particular, I don't think she can stomach being back in the UK and playing second fiddle for the rest of her life. That's one of the main reasons, at least what I've always believed, for her departure. So I'm not too sure about this theory. Perhaps they are still angling for the whole half in, half out. We'll go to England every once in a while with the children, of course, the props, and repaint ourselves, reapply the royal sheen, only to then go back to the US and enjoy the fruits of that royal sheen. And then when it wears off, go back, reapply, rinse and repeat. That is absolutely plausible to me. And I think Meghan in particular is delusional enough to think that it's still possible as an option. Tom Bauer seems to think that while this is what they're plotting, it's wishful thinking at best. He says, in choosing Birmingham, Harry had unwittingly exposed himself to unexpected controversy. The toxic reality of a city in turmoil, mired in threats of protest. And of course, let's not forget the fact that the Invictus Games hosts military veterans, including those from the Israel Defense Force. Could the monarch allow himself to be embroiled in the inevitable protests after the negative press the royal family had suffered recently? Considering all the damning words and lies spoken and written by the Sussexes against the royal family since 2021, and the enormous damage caused by the Sussexes' exploitation of the royal titles, the chance of the king irritating the Prince and Princess of Wales to please the Sussexes is, in spring 2026, remote. For the king to publicly meet his son and his troublemaking daughter-in-law, both guilty of betraying the royal family, I mean, I've made a couple of videos saying what they've done would basically amount to treason a few centuries ago, is a gamble with little upside. Let's sink our teeth into excerpt 2. How Prince Harry went to war with his charity boss and lost. Donations cancelled, orphans abandoned. Tom Bauer's new book uncovers the turmoil at Sentebale and why his coup against its African chairwoman failed. Here we get a retelling of what Dr. Sophie Chandauka said in her interview, her now infamous interview, that she gave last year when she shared her side of the story, which is that Sentebale was struggling and she had told Harry just that in Japan and Singapore. Things had gotten so bad, in fact, that the employees in Lesotho had presented a petition to Sentebale's country director criticizing their pay and conditions and questioning the director's use of the charity's funds. The two directors, who were based in London, Richard Miller and Graham Lee, were earning £350,000 plus many extras, and in Dr. Sophie Chandauka's opinion, were overpaid and underperforming. Remember how she brought up the fact that brand Sussex was now a toxic brand? Well, she'd apparently told Harry that too. On their flight to Singapore, the outspoken lawyer introduced another unpleasant reality check. Corporate brands hate controversy. After conducting a brand audit among 50 organizations and donors, she told Harry she had discovered that his personal brand value had crashed. People don't want to be associated with your Netflix shows, and especially not with Meghan, she reported. The survey also discovered that Meghan had little brand value in America. Across the globe, she actually damaged Harry's remaining brand value. Huge donors, we're talking Audi and American Polo sponsors, had started to cancel their donations and withdraw their sponsorships because they don't want to be associated with a page 6 story, as Dr. Sophie had told Harry. The problem is, though, that Harry refused to listen. So initially, it looked like she had drawn him in and had maybe started to convince him. At a Sentebale board meeting in September of 2023, Harry agreed to close the charity's London office and agreed to move management to
Lesotho
and find more American donors. He also agreed that the charity would abandon its unique focus on HIV sufferers and instead would focus more on children's health and education. At that same meeting, trustees considered Harry's brand value and told him, listen, you've got to stop with this whole victimhood spiel effectively. People don't like it and it's toxic. The solution, to which Harry agreed, was to abandon the poor rich prince narrative and go back to basics. Americans love a comeback story, said Chandauka. We need American corporates who want to be associated with your mission, not you personally. They don't want your victimhood. We've got to pitch it right for the young philanthropists. It can't be Africans with a begging bowl. And so if this information is to be believed, we can see that Dr. Sophie Chandauka tried to reason with Prince Harry. Remember how she was painted last year as this dictator, as this tyrant who wanted to come in with a wrecking ball, to quote Miley Cyrus, and destroy Sentebale as it was, as Harry knew it and loved it, and rebuild it according to her own taste. But if we are to believe this version of events, then it appears that Dr. Sophie Chandauka was trying to mitigate damage. She was trying to salvage what she could. She was given a shipwreck effectively already, and she was trying to rescue it. But the main thing to take away from this is that at one point, Harry was on board and agreed to go along with this new strategy to save Sentebale. So what changed? What led to the whole breakdown, which was made public last year? I think Dr. Sophie gave us the answer between the lines. She just really didn't get along with Meghan Markle. I mean, who does at this point is the real question. Meghan does not like people with strong personalities who stand up for what they think and what they believe. Ironic, being the feminist that she is. But she clearly did not get along with Dr. Sophie Chandauka because Dr. Sophie Chandauka wasn't happy with certain things that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry did and made it known. For example, showing up at the polo unannounced with Serena Williams, Netflix crew in tow, ruined the arrangement she had with the initial venue because they didn't approve of cameras on their property. It was a whole headache. Very classic Meghan Markle type. Add on top of that the awkward photo incident at that same match, which they insisted Dr. Sophie Chandauka explain away to the media in a public statement. Then you can get a picture, I'm sure, and you start connecting the dots as to why Harry, between September 2023 and October of 2024, had entirely changed his mind, had done a 180 and gone, you know what? Actually, no. I want control of this thing and I'm going to do it my way. That didn't work, of course. As Tom Bauer put it, the attempted coup failed. In March of 2025, Harry resigned from Sentebale along with his co-founder Prince Seso and the board of trustees. Chandauka would boast that Sentebale's annual income had remained roughly the same and all institutional donors had continued to support the charity. The future, without Harry, she reported, was secure. And with that, we end excerpt 2. But the story, of course, doesn't end. Because if there is anything Meghan and Harry excel at, it's a public clapback. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry issue furious statement in response to bombshell claims. Mr. Bauer's commentary has long crossed the line from criticism into fixation. This is someone who has publicly stated, quote, the monarchy in fact depends on actually obliterating the Sussexes from our state of life, unquote. Language that speaks for itself. He has made a career out of constructing ever more elaborate theories about people he does not know and has never met. Those interested in facts will look elsewhere. Those seeking deranged conspiracy and melodrama know exactly where to find him. Well, then sue the guy if you don't like what you're hearing, and best of luck with that. They couldn't sue him over revenge, and I'm not a betting person, but if I were, I'd bet a lot of money that they tried their hardest to nitpick and find something they can nail him on, and failed. Tom Bauer himself is a former barrister. He knows what he's doing, and if he weren't, then his publisher would be dotting their I's and crossing their T's and getting legal all over that. Tom Bauer has had an illustrious career for decades now, covering living members of the royal family and other figures as well, and he has never successfully been sued for defamation. So if this is all, what do they call it? Elaborate theories and deranged conspiracy and melodrama, then serve him and see him in court. Put things right. Tell us what the facts are. They say those interested in fact will look elsewhere. Where? The interviews and books that you've released, which are riddled with lies? Or should we look to the pillar of truth, Meghan Markle, who was very politely called out as a liar by a court of law? I'm fairly certain that they too are waiting for that book to be published in its entirety so that they can yet again waste millions getting lawyers to comb through it and to see what little detail they could possibly nail Tom Bower on. Let me know what you think. I am so excited about this book. Again, reminder, it's out March 26th. I'm not sure in what countries and what territories, but basically keep an eye out. I'm definitely getting it as soon as I can, and I cannot wait to sink my teeth into this one. I barely have enough time to do anything at this point, but I'm gonna carve out time, even if it means in the bath, to read this book. And if you'd like to support this channel, if you like what we're doing here, do consider visiting the link to Patreon in the description box. It will very much be appreciated. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great rest of your week. I'll see you next time.